Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Saturday Talk. Today we have Vernon Rexford speaking about Inupiaq Art, and it's a little bit about the history and what's got him to this point. So, thank you.
Thank you, Nat. If I could, the first thing I would like to do is I'd like to read what the flyer said. The title of this is called Inupiaq Art and the Struggle to Succeed. And I'm going to give many different examples in my own personal life of how I've become known as an artist, so to speak. And in order to do that, I'll first read this. And it says, can I survive on an honest dollar? The answer to that question is simply yes. As an Inupiaq man, I hold fast to many tools in my native world of art that now provide an answer to life's dilemma for many, many Alaska Native artists. A childhood can offer different struggles, opportunities, and increasingly a benefit if one desires to become successful by realizing the attributes that we have as Native people. As an Inupiaq man, it is the most important in my life that my children, my friends, my employees, and visitors understand the significance to the world of art. My world at one point in time didn't seem to bring goodness, prosperity, and peace. However, the transition of becoming part of the community has given different benefits. And in order for me to tell you exactly where I come from in my life, I first got to explain where art began in my family. My grandmother Bertha was one of the elders of the North Slope who made mucklucks for all the dance groups throughout the Arctic Slope. And she kind of established all the foundations to art in my own personal life. It then passed on into my mother's life. And my grandmother lived to be the age of 98 years old. And she taught my mother how to sew skins, how to create headgear for whaling, hunting, fishing, trapping, and she became a successful artist by herself. And that's where art begins for me. It came from my grandmother. It transitioned into my mother creating her own form of art. And my mother today, she has work in the Smithsonian Museum in DC and the Inupiaq Heritage Center here. So my world, if you can look around, is basically all baleen, all materials, all ivory. I chose a path of committing crime and indulging in addictive behaviors that led me to becoming kind of a spotlight of negativity in my own community. And I spent 22 years battling this disease of addiction and finding that life was trying to teach me how to stand. And you know, this is part of my story. This is part of the success in the upbringing of becoming an Alaska Native artist. I did some prison time. I spent 4 years in prison for some of the crime that I did, some of the drug dealing events that I was involved with. But to look at all these negative things, I also did some good things. I stood before a committee across the North Slope on this war on drugs after a foreign cab driver had been brutally murdered by 2 young Eskimo men trying to survive with alcoholism and drug addiction. So I traveled to all these villages and really trying to raise awareness on young men and women across the Arctic Slope that methamphetamines, which was my drug of choice, had become a destructive pattern and a source of trying to get to where I thought I wanted to be. So I was really chasing dreams that were not really dreams. I was chasing something outside of what I was raised to become. That becoming an artist, becoming a successful artist, it takes a struggle in order to get there. And one of the things I wanted to touch on today is the success of my business, the success of my abilities, my motives, my intentions doesn't come from me alone. I have a group of people that are all around me. They're constantly talking about me. They're constantly coming up with ways to better approach the business aspect of my life. And this guy came to me, I'm not going to say his name, and he basically said, how can I help you? How can I make you business cards, or for better words, create a web page for you, free of charge? And I looked back at all the struggle that I had in my life, and I said, you know, this is something that I've been really imagining in my mind for a lot of years, but I never had the resources in order to do that. So now I have all these people around me that have assisted me in creating pictures and photography, web pages, and it's kind of a social group event. These people get together and they have dinner and discuss different opportunities and venues for me to be able to not only create artwork, but to find a successful avenue in order to get me to understand that it's going to take time. And if I'd like to pass a few pieces around and just give you a little idea of some of the things that I do when I do scrimshaw and baleen. So, this wouldn't have been possible without BASC coming to me and asking me if I can speak on behalf of different Native artists across the North Slope, but not only across the North Slope, but also the state of Alaska. We have people that are real familiar to me in this room today, and I'll give you a little background about myself. I was raised here in Barrow, Alaska, June 13, 1976. I was born, and just like many Native men and women, I was born into this life of this struggle of addiction and alcoholism, the bootlegging, the drug dealing, and all these consist in my life to tell me that in order to become successful as an artist or in any field in your life, there has to be first an understanding or recognizing that bad things do happen. So today, this is really my world. This is a place where I find peace and serenity. If you come to the Heritage Center, you'll see our crew. We have many people that work with us under our business. And one of the things that I try to structure and instill into these young men that I pull off of the streets is that in order to become what you want to be in your mind in the future, is that you have to make good steps in that positive direction. You got to put the effort into coming to the shop every day. And I think the biggest struggle there is most of the people I work with still have the tendency, as soon as they get a check or a little bit of money, to go out and do some of the things that they're used to doing. And I've heard it once said that we are creatures of habit. And I'm sure many of us can sit here and raise our hands to that. However, my duty as an Eskimo artist is to teach people that if they would just stop and listen to the creative power within each and every one of us that we possess, that they'd be able to eventually break some of these habits, break some of these addictions and these mentalities that we have that we're inferior to the outside world. And so today, I look at this Inupiaq art and the struggle to succeed. And as somebody confirmed this morning, they came in and they basically said, don't forget you're speaking on behalf of all the Native artists across the North Slope and in the state of Alaska, because it is a struggle. It is a struggle for somebody who's not educated to make an honest dollar. And that was the first thing that came to my mind when BASC had asked me to do a presentation. So there are many components to how I've been given the blessing of having this creative energy to create pieces that sit in people's businesses, in their private homes, and in different museums. Some of my work is actually getting into the museums right now, and it's a really good thing. But on the other hand, there's really that struggle that I'd kind of like to touch on just for a few more minutes. Is many of us have never had the leadership in our own homes and our families in order to sit us down. I remember as a young boy wanting somebody to sit me down and to explain the struggle and the defeat of life, but being able to overcome that, having that victorious spirit that says I can do anything. I can do anything. And that's what I live by today. Everything happens for a reason. And, you know, I'm just in a joyful spirit right now. A little bit nervous. I've never really come to this place, but it's one of those things that will break through in its own time. And if you look at some of these pictures that I have here who support me, this is the opening picture to the website. If you picked up a business card here, there's some sitting on the back table over there. This is the actual opening image. If you want to get online and look at some of the things that we've done like that. Because as I said earlier, I can't do this by myself. I'm always searching and asking people for new and innovative ideas to try to create a successful environment. One of the things that I try to live by is that I go to the shop with a purpose every single day. I'm not there just to spend time to clean this baleen and to manufacture all this ivory in order to make that dollar. Of course, behind the scenes, that's part of it. But I want to get out there and I want to expose some of these young people that need a leadership, that need somebody to just be that role model. I don't know if I can be that. I don't know if I can be that for everybody. But I can tell you this, I do have this desire and this drive in order to lead by example. One of the famous people quoted, I don't know how many 100 years ago, but he said that, be the change in the world that you want to see. And I'm trying to do that. I'm doing the best that I can. Here's another thing that I want to talk about just for a few minutes is this piece that is created here. I've done the scrimshaw aspect of it. I've done the material, combining the material together, but I've also incorporated some different artists to help me make something that would be meaningful to maybe somebody who was interested in buying a piece for the office. And if you look at this piece over here, there is a 28-inch ivory tusk that was carved by my uncle Tommy Coates. And we collaborate our artist's ability in order to make nice pieces. And it's a pretty solid piece, and I'd kind of like to just show you that. And I'm really enjoying every aspect of this art career. You know, I graduated here in Barrow, Alaska in 1994. I had these crazy dreams about becoming a long-distance runner, but I was too short and too heavy. And I wanted to do different things, but today I look back at the course of my life and I see the struggle and I see the challenges that I've had to experience in order to get to a place where in a few years I might be able to run a successful business. And that's where I'm at right now. The Inupiaq artist, and trying to make an honest living, trying to support my family, trying to instill good positive affirmations into my own children in my home. And you know, every component of the business that we're in right now, it's really a struggle. It's a battle to maintain the supplies and to keep people motivated in order to continue coming back. But that's the inspiration that I want to give somebody. I want them to understand that every man is worth their own hire, and you pay people according to what they produce. And if you look back here, I've got a couple of my workers just kind of hanging out right there. That's William on the right, and that's Jack Booth there on the left. And my thing today is I can't do this by myself. I will tell you that. I cannot keep the supply and the demand flowing and the cash flow working until I first come to the understanding that I need these guys. And eventually I'd like to run my own gift shop for a couple of reasons. The first reason is I would like to provide services to all the Arctic Slope native artists. I'd like to open up just for some questions if you guys have any questions that you want to ask. I've been kind of rambling around. Yes?
Who and what are some of the influences in your work?
There's a guy by the name of Larry Avakana. He's doing, as a matter of fact, he's doing a presentation today. What's the irony in that? And if you go to the website, you'll find him as a link. He's got a museum and different shops where he's set up in, I think it's Seattle. And I saw him on a couple Oregon galleries and museums. And another guy by the name of Tony Henry, I believe he's from Point Lay, if I'm not mistaken. At about 12 years old, I was walking across this business office, and I looked up on the wall, and there was this amazing transfiguration of a side view of an Eskimo man with an Isilvik, and it was transformed into either a walrus or a piece of ice. And that was one of the areas where I just kind of looked at that in amazement, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do that someday. Any other questions?
Well, the way the business works now, are you getting most of the orders on the internet, or most of the orders here, or how's it work?
Most of my stuff right now is mainly through the local corporations. If you ever get a chance, ASRC has a bunch of portraits, and here is a portrait that I've done on a piece of baleen that has been blown up for viewing purposes. And this is one of the elders out of Koptovik. I don't know his name, so they've commissioned me to do 8 village-specific pieces with 3 elders who were part of the ASRC Board of Directors, either current or in the past. And this is some of the stuff. I tell you what, doing a portrait on a piece of baleen is probably one of the most challenging things that I've had to learn how to do or incorporate into my artwork style. And keep that in mind, this is the tool that I use. I don't use an electric Dremel or anything of that nature. It's a carbide scriber that you scratch into the baleen, and then once you scratch the picture into the baleen, you follow it up with a Fabuloster buffing compound. That way the natural light or the moisture in the atmosphere doesn't dilute the image over time. So there's a lot of different things that happen with the scrimshaw. And I brought a few of my sanding supplies to show you exactly how this works. The first thing that has to happen is there has to be a harvest of a bowhead whale. A crew has to catch a whale. And then all the young men and all the young women go out there and they pull this whale up and they cut it all up, divide it. It goes to their whaling crews at their homes, and I show up and I get some baleen. And then you take it to the Heritage Center. And I believe I have a picture here that shows a soaking tub. This is a piece of baleen that I was soaking in the water. Sometimes you'll get baleen that's been sitting for a couple of years, maybe even 5 or 10 years, and it's really dried out and dehydrated. In order to get the baleen back to its natural state, you have to soak it in warm water, and then you weigh it down on the floor to keep it nice and flat. After you dry it out on the floor, you take a palm sander with a 80 grit, a 150 grit, and a 220. Then you follow it up with a drywall sanding block, a medium, a fine, or a coarse, and then you use a super fine sanding paper here, and then you follow it up with a steel wool, and then you're able to polish the baleen. One of my things that I try to teach the people who are employed with us is that I like to be able to see my own image in the baleen. In the near future, I'd like to start doing some grant writing to come up with some funding to travel to all these villages and find all the young artists who are up and coming in order to have a art display or some kind of gallery here in Barrow. And I think that would be beneficial for the people who don't understand the labor-intensive process of being able to get the work to where it's at today. That's one of my visions that I have. And I'll take more questions if anybody has any more questions.
You ever have like baleen shortages? I don't know.
Oh yeah, there has been baleen shortages. I think for the greater part of these 18 years that I've been trying to become a well-known artist, we do have baleen shortages. And since you asked that question, I remember as a young boy, the whaling crews being able to pull up 65-foot bowhead whales. But you know, the global warming impact has lessened the thickness of the ice, and most of the times they go after the smaller whales now. So that's a good question. So basically, today I just came here to say that it is a struggle. It is a struggle to maintain an honest dollar. And I mean, let's think of it like this. You give somebody a piece of baleen to work on, and even though it stinks, it's dirty, and it takes a lot of hours and effort in order to get that dollar, would you rather be encouraging some young man to go to the liquor store to buy some booze and to make that bad dollar? And it's everywhere. The struggle and the battle to survive as an artist is everywhere. It's all this stuff that is behind me is just that. It's the past. There's a new day today. I want to incorporate positive things for the people who we employ and also my own immediate family. And about 9 more minutes, but I want to just kind of close up by saying that I want to thank everybody for coming here, BASC for inviting us to be here. And without you guys being here, the message of the struggle to be an Alaska Native artist and trying to do the right thing would maybe never get out there. But I want to thank you guys personally, and Floyd and William and Jack over there for being here. I can't do this by myself, and I hope it's been more informative than anything. I don't want to give you something that doesn't feel right to you. I just wanted to come and say that every artist is going to struggle at some point in time in their career. How they choose to respond to that is what makes the difference, and I'm finding that to be true in my own business right now. It's becoming successful. It's becoming out there. It's becoming publicized, and to do that. And I want to thank BASC again for inviting us. Thank you, Knock. So that's it for me. Thank you.